Okay, so today we're talking about mortise and tenon joints. Mortise and tenon joints are commonly used in frame construction, often used in table leg construction. So this is actually the table put together with a mortise and tenon, a blind mortise and tenon. There's a mortise put inside of this leg, into this shoulder, and then on the end of this apron is a tenon. You'll learn more about that as we talk throughout the lesson today. All right, here we go. We're going over the mortise joint today. This is in combination with the mortise and tenon. Today we're only going to be making and demonstrating the mortise. Okay, this is the female aspect of the joint. The aspect of the joint that's going to be receiving the tenon. So we generally make this aspect of the joint first. This is frame construction, most commonly used in table leg construction. So as you can see here, I kind of have 4 different legs sketched out here. We need to identify how our legs are going to be set up before we determine where we are going to create the mortise on the legs. So in most leg construction, it's going to be a lamination, which a lamination is gluing 2 boards together to get a desired thickness. You can kind of see it in this example here. There's a seam right here where I've glued 2 boards together, 1, 2, to get a thicker stock that would represent a table leg. Okay? So, once we have glued up all of our legs, they're generally going to be square, and have cut them to the desired size, we are then going to determine where we want our mortises to exist. So in this situation here, as you guys can see, put a little extra information on here. I've drawn my end grain pattern on each one of my separate legs. This doing the frown face, smiley face of the end grain to try and prevent warpage, but not only, it eliminates the seam on here. If these are cut out of the same board and we roll them over, it helps to eliminate the seam down the edge of the board. That's one reason why we do that. So once we have this laid out how we would like it to be, we're going to go through, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I already have this labeled as A, B, C, D. We're going to identify each one of our separate legs, and then we're going to identify what is the front, back, and sides. So this aspect of the board or leg right here is going to be surface grain. This is going to be edge grain with that seam down the side of it. So this is going to be surface grain. This is going to be edge grain. We want to see our surface grain. So we're going to make our surface grain on the front and the back of our project. So I'm going to identify, this is the front of my leg. This is the backs of my legs. So this would be the back of the table, this would be the front of the table. And those are going to be the most aesthetically pleasing features of the leg, so we want those to be more prominent and seen. So, this is the front and the back. Now we're going to determine where our mortises go. So our mortises are going to be joined with aprons in this general area, so on and so forth, all the way around. We want to actually take all 4 legs that we have and set them up just like we have them here, looking at the end of them and marking where we want the mortises to go on our actual stock or on our leg. So this would represent this leg right here. This could be leg A in this situation. Okay? So once we've determined how we want our legs to be laid out and where our mortises are going to exist, we're now going to draw out the mortise guidelines on our actual stock so that we can go and drill out this mortise using the hollow chisel mortise machine. Okay? So that's kind of the setup. We glued up our legs, we got them cut to size, we laid out how we want them to exist within the table. Now we're going to start drawing out the guidelines to create the mortise itself, which brings us to this section over here. Once again, we are making the mortise. That's the hollow aspect that's going to receive this tenon. All right. The mortise width is standard at 3/8 of an inch. I don't know if you can see that there, but that's 3/8 of an inch wide. That is controlled by the hollow chisel mortise machine. You can put different chisels on there and get a different width there. But that is standard. Once again, we're always assuming we're working with standard stock, which standard stock width or thickness is going to be 3/4 of an inch. So generally speaking, you're always going to have a 3/8 mortise if you're using standard stock, and that is the width. Typical depth of your mortise, how far back into the wood, this is a hidden line representing a hollow cavity going back inside there. Typical depth on those would be the length of the tenon sticking out. Once again, we're not making the tenon today, but we will be later this week, is 3/4 of an inch. So the depth of our mortise is going to be 3/4 of an inch as well. Actually, I make mine slightly deeper than the length of the tenon. That's to prevent this tenon from bottoming out before this shoulder reaches the leg. We want the shoulder of this tenon to be nice and tight up against the surface of that leg so we do not have a crack there. Okay? So we're going to drill this mortise slightly deeper than whatever we make the length of our tenon. Generally speaking, the larger the leg becomes, the longer the tenon becomes. But typically, on most furniture we'll make in leg sizes, you're going to be right around 3/4 of an inch in length with regards to the length of the tenon. Okay? So we have now determined the width of the mortise. Based on the hollow chisel mortise, it's going to be making it 3/8, and we're going to a depth of 3/4. How to determine how long this is based on the width of your apron. Okay, so if we look over here, bottom of apron, we don't really know what the width of our apron is at this point, so I'm just going to make an assumption and say this is fairly standard. I'm going to say this is a 3-inch apron. Once again, the apron is the part of the table that's going to wrap around, connecting all 4 legs together. So if we're going with 3 inches on this apron, now if we come over here and look at it, the layout line for this, we need to find the center of where we're going to start drilling our mortise hole. So typical layout on a table is to have a 1/4 inch, I don't know if you can see this or not, 1/4 inch offset from the edge of the table, so you have this little lip right here represented on this side as well, so you have that little bit of an offset. The 2 different ways you can do it is you can have that standard, which is standard in industry, 1/4 inch offset, or you can go to the center of the leg. The representation I'm giving here on the board is the 1/4 inch offset, which is most typically used. Okay? So, if we're doing that 1/4 inch offset, which is most typically used, our center line is going to be 5/8 of an inch off the edge. How we are determining that, once again, our stock is 3/4, and we want a 1/4 inch offset, so the actual outside edge of the apron would exist like this. So this 1/4 inch is 2/8, right? Or 1/4, and then half of 3/4 is 3/8. So 2/8 plus 3/8 equals 5/8. How I'm determining where that center line exists. Okay? So again, this bottom line right here, that is representing the bottom of the apron. So in that situation, that would be if this was my apron, I'm taking it, laying it on top of my board, making it flush with the top and transferring it down, or measuring, once again I'm saying it's 3 inches, 3 inches down and marking the bottom edge. As you can see, we have a shoulder on both sides of the tenon all the way around. How far down we come to create the first aspect of our mortise and how far up from the bottom of the apron we come is 3/8. So there's a 3/8 shoulder here, 3/8 shoulder here. Basic math, we know this is 3/16, this is 3/8, and the opposing side is 3/16. 3/16 plus 3/16 is 3/8, plus the width of the mortise is 3/8, which equals 3/4 our stock width, or thickness rather. Okay? So once again, 3/16, 3/8, 3/16. The top measurement here is 3/8, and the bottom shoulder is 3/8. So that is the layout and dimensions that we're going to use in determining how to set up our mortise. Now what we're going to do is actually go to our stock. So if I'm looking at the top of this, I know I have an apron coming out this side, so I'm going to make sure I'm measuring from this side. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to measure 3/8 of an inch or 5/8 of an inch off this edge. 5/8 of an inch off the edge. I'm going to transfer that 5/8 down. Once again, I would do that on every single side that receives an apron. So I'm going to measure over here, 5/8 of an inch again, and then I'm going to transfer that line down as well. Once I have done that, once again, what I'm trying to do is emulate this on my board. I'm going to measure down 3/8 of an inch from the top edge. So again, I'm using a tri-square here. 3/8 of an inch down. The length of my apron was 3 inches. So that's the bottom of my apron. Not the bottom of my mortise. From the bottom of my apron is 3/8 of an inch up. So what I need on every board or every leg is 2 of these drawn. We should be drilling 8 mortises if we have a 4-legged table. So I'm going to come over here. I should, if I've done it right and I have everything cut straight, I should be able to just transfer this line over the corner and rotate it around the board to transfer the top edge of my mortise on this side, and then to do the same thing on the opposing side. Now, on the first one I drew the overall length of my, or width of my apron down. I don't technically need that on the other 2 sides because all I need to know is the length of the mortise. As you can see, my mortise is going to fall along this line and start and stop at those intersecting points. Now we're going to move over to the hollow chisel mortise machine, walk through the setup of the hollow chisel mortise machine for drilling out these mortises. We are now at the hollow chisel mortise machine. One thing I'm going to show you here is there is a water fountain located right there. What we're going to do with that is we're going to take a piece of paper towel. We're going to set this over to the drain of that just to ensure that we're not getting anything down in the drain. Okay, so what we're looking at here, it's hard to see in the video, so I'm just going to read this to you, but this tells you everything you need to know about using this machine. It takes you step by step through it. Once again, this is a hollow chisel mortise. Hollow chisel mortise setup, and it has a 3/8 chisel on it currently. Okay, so the first thing that is stated on the sign right here is set, hold down, or make a wedge to hold down the post. What that is referencing to is if I'm going to set my stock up here, but once again, this is where I'm drilling a mortise. This is where another place where I'm drilling a mortise. If my stock is shorter than my fence, I cannot put this and put pressure down on it to hold it in place. So what we do is we make a little wedge that can slide underneath that hole down. It's going to apply pressure to prevent this from coming up when we pull the chisel back up out of the stock. Okay? So that's the first thing we're going to do. Next thing, adjust the fence in or out to get the chisel to correct location for the edge of the lathe. So what it's saying is move the fence forwards and backwards so that this chisel is coming down and lining up on that center line that we've already drawn out for drilling the mortise. What you can do is just come down lightly and you can put a slight indentation in the stock. So as you can see here, I pulled it down. I have an indentation right on my line so that I have it already set up. Majority of the time, it's going to be set up at the default of 5/8 of an inch off the edge of the stock. So you probably just have to check that, but you want to make sure you check it before you start drilling any of your mortises out. Okay? So once again, this is going to make it where it comes and this chisel is lining up with that layout line we've already created. Okay? That's the second step. Third step, adjust depth stop to the correct setting. So as we mentioned earlier, we want this mortise going down into our stock 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to mark 3/4 of an inch on here to give me a reference. Once again, I'm going to come, when I set this, I'm going to come down a little bit below that so that I'm making sure that my tenon does not bottom out in my mortise. To do this, it says adjust the depth stop to the correct setting. That is number 3 on this sheet. There's a number 3 pointing to the set screw right here. That's how we're going to set our depth stop. All you have to do is pull the handle down to the desired depth. So again, I'm going slightly deeper than 3/4. And then you're going to tighten this set screw right here. There's an Allen key that's located on the opposing side of the machine. Now when I come down, it's going to stop at that depth every single time so I can get a consistent depth when I'm drilling out this mortise. Now we have the machine set up the way that we need it. What we're going to do is come through here and you'll see it done. But I start out by drilling my shoulder first. So I'm going to take a square out right here. Then I'm going to move to the opposing side. I'm going to take a square out right here. And then I'm going to cut out every other hole, leaving a little bit of material between each one. And then I'm going to come back and clean all of those up, making sure I use multiple plunges in doing so that I'm removing any material that's down inside there. Okay, so we're going to set this up, get our safety glasses on, and drill out this. First shoulder, I'm going to slide down to the opposing side. Every other hole. As you can see, I went through every other hole that allows me to keep a truer cut. Now I'm going to come back and clean out anything that remains. As you can see there, we have our mortise cut. To the center line is 5/8. So if I was to put a piece of stock up here and it had a tenon on it, it would get inserted in there. And I would have a shoulder on the outside edge of it. Okay, you will see this combined when we make our tenon for this. Obviously, on all 4 of my legs, wherever I have a red line, I'm going to proceed to the next. So that I do not have to reset the machine, the next leg is going to be laying in the opposite direction. So the leg will be going out to the right instead of the left, keeping the same offset distance from the fence. That is essentially how you make a mortise. You'd replicate that process 8 more times, and you would have all of your 8 mortises, 2 on each of your legs, for making a mortise and tenon joint. This is referred to as a blind mortise and tenon because it is not going all the way through the leg. You could make a through mortise and tenon where the tenon and the mortise goes all the way through, and you would see the tenon sticking out the opposing side. There are also pinned mortise and tenons where you would do either one, through or blind, and then you could drill a dowel hole and insert a pin through both the side of the leg and the tenon that exists in there. Okay, so those were 3 different types of mortises I listed. A blind mortise and tenon, which is what I demonstrated. A through mortise and tenon, where the tenon is going to go all the way through and come out the back side of the stock of the leg. And then a pinned mortise and tenon can be any form of a mortise and tenon that you've created, but it's going to have a pin or a dowel drilled through and going through both the edge, both sides of the mortise, and through the tenon that is stuck within there, creating a locking mechanism for that. Extremely strong joint, a lot of contact area for glue, multiple surface areas.